Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Trigger Point Yin. My name is Meg and I'll be leading you through your practice. Today we're going to go over a sequence of stretches and trigger point exercises for the lower back. A lot of times when your lower back hurts, it's not actually the muscles of the lower back that are causing the problem. They're being pulled on or pulled out of alignment by possibly the quads or the glutes, Iliopsoas. So we're going to go through all of that and then also get into the Quadratus Lumborum, the QL, so getting directly into the lower back. But before we get started, I'd like to take a couple moments to settle in and breathe. So if you're sitting on the ground or in a chair or on a bolster or cushion, sit up nice and tall. Ground down through your sit bones, roll your shoulders up to your ears. Take a deep breath in. Exhale, settle them back and down. Let your elbows hang right underneath your shoulders. Feel your shoulders fall off the back of your body and feel your collarbones rest broad across your chest. Then lift the base of your skull, lengthening the back of your neck. And you can soften in your face, maybe even shutting your eyes or letting your gaze rest down and out in front of you. Then take some deep breaths in through the nose, sighing them out through the mouth, helping to settle your nervous system, allowing you to connect into the sensation in your body, and also noticing what it feels like to hold your body upright. A lot of times we slouch and let the shoulders come forward and round in the back, and it can be a lot of effort to sit up straight, but this is a bone stacked position, so it should be easier. Gravity should be having the least amount of effect on you in this shape. So just noticing if it is your belly that's getting tired, if it's your shoulder blades that are getting tired, if it's your lower back that's getting tired, just noticing where it is a challenge to keep yourself erect. That's just good information to have. So you can exhale all of your air. Then inhale through your nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause, holding your breath at the top. 2, 1. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause, holding your breath at the bottom. 2, 1. Again, inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale and keep that going. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Noticing what each section of breath feels like. Trying to take the inhale as deep as you can, getting some expansion in the ribs and in the belly. Pausing, noticing what it feels like to be full. Exhaling completely until you press out all of the stale air. And then noticing what it feels like to be empty. And this will help to settle your nervous system so that when we get into the stretches and the trigger points, which won't necessarily be the most comfortable, you'll be able to stay with the sensation. You'll already be taken down a notch energetically, so it'll be a little easier to stay with it and stay relaxed. Keep that going. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Allowing yourself to slow down and noticing if you feel any urgency around getting on with it, about moving on with class, getting into the first exercise. And that is part of the practice as well, right? We tend to spend most of our time getting through our to-do list, putting more and more things on our schedule. And then when we get still, it can feel awkward. It can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like a waste of time. But being with yourself, right? Giving yourself time to feel what it's like to be you is never a waste of time. We have this body and this mind for our entire life, so we might as well create a deeper relationship with it, with ourselves, and actually tune into how we're feeling. And when we have a really busy schedule, when we don't have even a moment in our day to check in, when we do sit down to relax, our mind can get really loud and really fast. And all the sensations in our body that we've been ignoring can get really loud and really present. That's why a lot of people experience a racing mind or a lot of body ache right before they go to bed. Because those things have been there all day, you've just been ignoring them because your mind is on something else. And it's inconvenient to be anxious at work. It's inconvenient to feel sad and need to or want to go out with friends. It's inconvenient to have aches and pains when you need to chase your kids around or get housework done. So checking in with those things, noticing what's there, getting current with your experience, it's important so that it doesn't just slam you every time you are trying to have a moment of relaxation or you're trying to get to sleep. Because when you pay attention to it, you can do something about it sooner. You can fully pay attention to the emotional state that you're in, let it process, and you can also start to deal with the aches and pains, right? You're obviously watching this video for a reason, so getting into exercises for your lower back, if that's what's hurting, getting into a stretching routine, doing little things throughout the day, a minute here, a minute there, to help yourself open up and stay relaxed. It can be something that you do throughout your day, not just, when you suddenly get slammed with a bunch of discomfort. All right, so there's one more full breath cycle, just like that. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. And when you're finished, we're going to meet in a tabletop, all fours. You can stack your shoulders over your wrists, your hips over your knees, spread your fingers wide, and grip the mat. Inhale, drag your chest forward, pick up the sternum, pick up the tailbone, pull the shoulder blades down and back as if you're trying to squeeze the tips of the shoulder blades together. Exhale, press the ground away, round spine. Spread the shoulder blades wide, press into your hands, press into your knees, and then lift your navel up into your spine. Again, like that. Inhale, belly lowers, heart forward. Exhale, round back, tuck chin. Keep that going. Inhale. Exhale. Keep moving on your own. It is great to get all the different directions in the spine. Great for spine health. And you can notice the way your shoulder blades move, the way your collarbones move, not just the way your spine moves. All right, then keep the movement going, but explore a little bit. Maybe jump rope the spine, roll out the neck. If you need to dip one shoulder, dip the other shoulder. Just following sensation. I know it can feel a little weird to just move. That's something that we do as children. We just tend to lose it as adults. But moving not because it looks like something specific, not moving because we're instructed to or supposed to, but just moving because it feels good. Because it's interesting the way your body moves and the way your body feels. All right. You can come back to stillness, and we're going to start by getting into the quads. So we're going to get a quad stretch and then sort of work on the fronts of the thighs and the fronts of the hips. For the quad stretch, you're going to need a wall or something to lean your foot against. I recommend having a blanket, something to put your knee on, and blocks handy or something that you can help to support yourself with. So I'm going to start with my left side, and I'm going to come into that same tabletop shape and then place my left knee on the blanket up against the wall. So my foot is pointing towards the ceiling. And this might be where you stay. Hands underneath your shoulders, right knee on the ground, left foot pointing up towards the sky. If you're getting a good stretch here, great. Maybe a little tuck of your pubic bone towards your ribs to get more length through the front of the hip. And you can hang out here. Next step would be stepping your right foot forward. You can ooch those toes forward until your ankle is underneath your knee and hands can stay on the ground. Next step, maybe grabbing blocks to place your hands on, coming up a little higher. From there, you can put forearms onto your thigh. From there, coming all the way up, shoulders over the hips. Your butt can be close to your heel. To get more, press the tailbone down, lunge forward into it, bringing your hips away from your heel. And eventually, as you need more than that, you can twist away from the bent leg or away from the back leg. So I'm twisting to the right. Or play with some side body stretch to get more Iliopsoas in that stretch. And we're going to stay here for about another minute. So breathe into it. You're probably having a lot of sensation here. There tends to be a lot of tension in the quads. When we sit, our quads tighten. The muscles are both short and tight, so they're shortened from sitting, right? And then when we stay in that position for a long time, they can get locked up in that position. So then when you stand up and lengthen the quad back out, it can be really tight to the point where it's hard to stand up straight. And before I go into that, just a couple more things to think about here. Your back knee should be towards the midline of your body, and you shouldn't be opening your hips to the side. The hip should be square, so hip bones pointing in front of you. And then if you need more support here, you can have something underneath your hands or even put a chair next to you so that you have support and you're not wiggly. Your focus should not be on balance. It should be on relaxing into the stretch. So when the quads get really tight, they pull down on the fronts of the hips, which creates an anterior tilt in the pelvis. And then when we stand back up, our hip flexor, right, this crease, doesn't want to come all the way open, right? So it can feel like you're leaning forward a little bit, or you're sort of sticking your butt out behind you when you're standing up straight. And that tilt in the pelvis, and I'll demonstrate it here in just a minute what that looks like, can create compression in the lower back and thus lower back pain. So after a minute, you can come back down, come out of it, shake out your leg, and I like to straighten that leg out behind me, maybe shake it out, doing some circles. And then we'll come right into the other side. Right knee backs all the way up to the wall, hands underneath your shoulders. Again, this is a good place to stay. Maybe step the left foot forward. Maybe come up onto blocks, up onto your thigh, or all the way up. Back knee, right knee is towards the midline of your body, meaning your right knee isn't out to the right. It's not super wide. It's more in line with your belly button. Then lunge into it as much as is tolerable. Keep it breathable. So you're still breathing, and you can always come back to that 4-part breath that we did at the beginning to help relax your nervous system, help you settle into sensation, keep your brain from sort of disappearing off into the land of anxiety or worry or just distraction. Being with yourself in quiet is a big ask for most people. I mean, when you're out, look around. How many people are just sitting, even at a park? I live in Austin, go to Barton Springs. How many people are just sitting? There's so many people who are, if they're alone, if they're left alone for even a minute, they grab their phone. And we are so used to that distraction that being quiet with ourselves, with nothing to do, can be scary, if not just boring. And boredom's not going to kill you. Boredom is actually quite an interesting place to be. It's a great way to get creative and get inspired. But just checking in with yourself on that, right? Giving yourself the opportunity to get still, to get quiet, and see what your reaction is, right? Is it uncomfortable, anxiety-provoking? Does your brain immediately fire off a dozen things that are a better way to spend your time? Does your mind go to some catastrophe? What happens for you mentally and in your nervous system when you ask yourself to get still and get quiet? All right. You can come out of it now. Come back onto the ground. And then shake out that leg. You can straighten it out behind you, maybe do some circles with that knee. And then we'll move on to the trigger point. For working into the iliopsoas and the quads, I recommend having a bolster, and of course you also need a lacrosse ball or tennis ball. It can also be nice to have a blanket. You'll have one knee out to the side, so especially if you have sensitive knees, grab something to put underneath it. So, we're going to start by getting into the iliacus, iliopsoas connection. So if you find your hip bone on the front of your body and roll just to the inside of it, that is where you're going to want the lacrosse ball. I'm going to start with my right side, and I have my bolster out in front of me, and I'm going to lay on my belly. Bring the lacrosse ball to the inside of my hip bone. And then the other knee will come out to the side. That's where the blanket might be helpful to put something underneath your knee. And then you can lay over your bolster. You can also stay up on your forearms if that feels better to you. And you can roll that lacrosse ball down a little bit by scooting forward. If that feels better, again, letting it be an exploration of sensation. So the iliopsoas, the iliacus and the psoas are both muscles deep in your abdomen, inside of your hip. And if you think of the muscles along your lower back, your QL, on the anterior side of that, so on the front side of your body towards your belly button, would be the psoas. And it runs down and connects into the iliacus, both to the inside of the hip crest. And then those feed down through the pelvis into, or through the hip flexor into the quad, and they sort of join together a couple fingers width below your hip crease, in the middle of your quad, in your rectus femoris. So when our Iliopsoas complex is tight. That can manifest as lower back pain. And it can just pull directly on the muscles of the lower back because they're close together. It can also feed tension down through the quad and just create more tension along the front of your thigh, which can close your hip joint, again, create an anterior tilt in your pelvis and compress your lower back. So as you relax into this one, you might be feeling like your skin is stretching, or it might even be more of a stinging sensation, and that is a stretch in your fascia and your connective tissue. And then if you need a little bit more sensation here, it's good to externally rotate that right leg. So my knee and my toe are out to the side just a little bit. A little external rotation will intensify the pressure there. And you'll stay with it until something changes, until sensation dissipates. And this is, well, all of these stretches and exercises are something that you can do regularly, if not every day, as part of your self-care routine. And whenever we think about having a new self-care routine, an exercise routine, anything like that, we can feel a lot of resistance to starting it. Starting is usually the hardest part. Because once you're laying on the lacrosse ball, you're already doing it. Yes, there can be thoughts of resistance then, not wanting to stay as long as you need to, etc. But starting is the hardest part. Because you have to get over that initial resistance. All of the things that your brain will put in the way, more things on your to-do list, noticing things around the house that need to be cleaned up, wanting to spend time just relaxing. So, whether that's watching a show or knitting or doing whatever else you like to do to relax. We tend to put all of those things in front of what we need to do, what is actually more important. So in this case, it would be self-care, but it can be anything. It could be working on your business, or sitting down to write your book, or deepening your relationship with your partner, sitting down for conversation, or planning a trip, whatever it is. When things are important to us and the outcome is important to us, we tend to resist doing them. Because humans are good at a lot of things, predicting the future is not one of them. And we're afraid of the unknown. It makes us uncomfortable. So you can take another breath or two on this side, and then we'll switch over to the other side. So bringing the lacrosse ball, again, just as a reminder, just to the inside of your hip bone, so bony prominence of your ascis, anterior superior iliac spine, just to the inside of it, maybe a little bit down, and laying on your belly. Other knee comes out to the side, right knee out to the side, and then some external rotation in the left leg. And you can be fully relaxed over your bolster, over a pillow here. So you don't need to be holding up your head. You don't need to be pressing into your elbows or having any strain in your shoulders. And something to look out for is your femoral artery. It's going to be significantly lower than where the lacrosse ball is supposed to be. But if you feel a thumping, you're on the wrong spot, and don't keep the lacrosse ball there. Move it up, and don't cut off that blood flow. So we can feel resistance to starting something new, right? Committing our time to self-care, committing our time to stretching, to exercise, to cooking for ourselves, etc. And whenever we recognize that resistance, right? Recognize that we're doing a bunch of unnecessary things in order to get out of doing the thing that we actually need to do, we can wake up to that. We can be compassionate to ourselves, recognize that we're feeling resistance, right? Even if we're not sure why exactly we feel resistance, right? Because usually when we start the thing, it's not as bad as we think it's going to be. And we might not even think that it's going to be bad. We're just having a moment of resistance. But waking up to that, noticing what you're doing to avoid the thing that you're trying to do, and getting to it, right? Noticing in that moment that you don't need to be folding the laundry. You need to be, I don't know why I keep thinking writing your book, but you need to be writing your book. So sit down, write a couple lines, just start. If you need to be stretching or doing self-care, sit down on your lacrosse ball right then. Just do it. And there usually, I find, is a sense of relief once you actually start. All right, so once something changes for you, you can come off of that lacrosse ball. And then we're going to move on to the quads. And we're going to get specifically, two specific points. One is where the Iliopsoas sort of come together in the top of the rectus femoris. So if you find your hip crease where it is that you crease, right, that spot, and move maybe 3 inches down, 3 to 4 inches down, right in the middle of your thigh, that is going to be the top of your rectus femoris and where Iliopsoas all sort of come together. So, same shape, coming onto your belly, placing the lacrosse ball where you want it. You don't need to externally rotate that leg. I'm going to skip the blanket for this one. Laying over something, or you can fully lay flat if that feels better. But getting as relaxed as possible. Setting yourself up so that it is sustainable. And the quads are big muscles, so they can have a lot of sensation associated with their tension. So allow yourself to breathe into it. Allow yourself to be with the discomfort. Don't push it as far as pain, right? You can get a softer ball. You can put a blanket in between your body and the lacrosse ball to pad it a little bit. It doesn't have to be, teeth gritting, breath holding, intense. It shouldn't be like that. Make sure that it's breathable. Make sure that you can relax. And once you find that change or feel something soften, you can switch over to the other side. Again, finding your hip crease and then rolling down 3 to 4 inches right in the middle of the thigh. Setting yourself up, other knee can come out to the side. Laying all the way flat, laying over something. Taking some expansive breaths. Checking in with your neck, checking in with your abs, making sure you're not gripping in your belly or squeezing in your glutes. All right, and then again, whenever you're ready, you can come off of that lacrosse ball. And we're going to get into the Vastus Lateralis. So if you think of the quad as being cut into 3 sections, the inner section, the middle, and the outer, we're going to work down this outer line of the quad. So we're going to roll that lacrosse ball. We're going to start a little above midway, a little above halfway between the hip crease and the knee on that outer third of the quad, or outer third of the front of your thigh. And I'll start with the right side again. I like to have my bolster in front of me for this one. And this one is generally pretty intense for me. So I will need to be breathing through it. So, placing the lacrosse ball where you want it, other knee comes out to the side again, and then my foot is internally rotated. My toes are turned in this time because I am on that outer third. So to keep the balance and to keep the pressure in the right spot, leg is internally rotated. And then you can again support your chest, support your head, lay over something. And then for this one, whenever you get some release, you're going to move on by scooting forward, thus rolling the lacrosse ball down your leg a little bit more. So the same idea as a foam roller, we're just using a lacrosse ball. And you can do this with a foam roller. It won't be as pointed, but it'll do the job just fine. I just work with lacrosse balls. And then again, every time you feel yourself relax, anytime the sensation dissipates, scoot forward a little bit, roll that lacrosse ball down a little bit more, and then settle into it again. One of the sort of manifestations of resistance is overthinking, right? Trying to logic your way through something, predicting all of the outcomes, setting up the situation like a giant game of chess so that you can hopefully protect yourself from harm of any kind, right? Emotional harm usually being the number one. The harm of disappointment or sadness or rejection, etc. But we can't predict the future. No matter how many scenarios we run through in our head, whether you're wanting to quit your job and get a new one, start your own business, start a relationship with someone, end a relationship with someone, start a creative project, start a health routine. Doesn't matter what it is. You can run through all the scenarios you can think of. You can logic around it as much as you want. But no amount of thinking is ever going to stop you thinking, right? There's always going to be one more point to rehash, one more angle you can look at it from, one more counterpoint to your internal argument. So at some point, you just have to do the thing. And trust yourself enough to get out of that thought tornado, right? Drop it, no matter where along the path of a thought you are. Just drop the thought and do the next right thing, right? Take one step in the direction you want to go. So once you get the lacrosse ball an inch or two above your knee, I haven't really been rolling that fast, but I'm gonna get through it. So once you get the lacrosse ball an inch or two above the knee, you can come off of that lacrosse ball. I recommend taking a little break after you do one side, maybe shake out the leg, give it an actual shake behind you before you set up for the other side. And for the sake of time of this video, I'm only going to demo that one side, but same thing on the other side, rolling all the way from about a hand's width below your hip crease on that outer line of the leg, all the way down to just above the knee. So when your quads are locked down, or your iliopsoas is locked down, those muscles can, well, especially the quads, can pull down on the hip bone, right? So you have these hip bones on the front of your pelvis. Hip bones get pulled down, but then we still want to stand upright. So we lift the chest, and that creates anterior tilt in the pelvis, right? The pelvis is like a bowl, it's being spilled forward. And it sticks the tailbone out behind us, and that creates that sway in the lower back. And that compression hurts. And it also sort of spills our belly out the front of our body, and that added weight to the front of our body creates more strain on the lower back because it's more of a lever pulling forward. But when we can lengthen the quads, bring the hips back into alignment, lengthen the front of the hips, it neutralizes the lower back. And then you don't have that sway in the lower back or that compression. And then when the glutes are tight, that can just pull down on the lower back, and it can pull on our SI joints, right? We have those SI joints in our lower back, and those can get pulled out of alignment. It can sort of lift one hip or the other and compress one side of the back or the other. And all of that tension and misalignment translates up into pain in the lower back. So that is, again, why we're working quads, iliopsoas, glutes to get into the lower back. Maybe your quads aren't the primary issue, so the other place to check is in your glutes. So we're going to start with a Glute Max Stretch, and then a supine pigeon to get more Glute Medius, Glute Minimus, Piriformis. So you're going to come onto your back. You don't need any props for these. And actually, get that out of the way. Come onto your back. Start with the right side. Lace your hands over your right knee. Pull it in toward your chest. And then move your right knee towards your left shoulder without coming into a supine twist. If you have just had a baby, this is too much strain on your pelvis. If you're, So if you have just given birth, don't do this. This is going to be a lot of strain on the pelvis. That's all. So moving it across the body towards the opposite shoulder, and you'll be feeling this more in your underbutt, maybe across the butt cheek a little bit, but mostly in the underbutt, upper back of the thigh. You can really snuggle it in tight. You can breathe deep into your belly, letting your belly press out into the compression of your thigh. Take another deep breath in here. Exhale, release. Let that leg come all the way out and then shake the foot back and forth. Other side, left knee comes in. Squeeze it in first. Really relax the right leg. Then move the leg across your body. So left knee towards the right shoulder. Again, check in, make sure that right leg is relaxed. I just noticed I was flexing my toes. So relax your feet, relax your ankles. Another deep breath in. Exhale, release. Shake that leg out. Then plant your feet on the ground. Cross your right ankle over your left thigh. That might be enough stretch for you. You can push your hand into your knee, letting it open up a little bit more. You can also place your hands behind your left thigh, pulling that whole thing in. So my left foot is relaxed, but my right toes have a little bit of flex back towards my knee, and that'll help to keep the knee joint safe. Press it down through your lower back. So you're trying to keep the spine long as you pull your ankle in. There are lots of ways to get this stretch. You can come into a regular pigeon pose. You can also put your leg up on the counter in this shape. You can also let go of that left leg and sort of cradle the right leg. That's a little much for me. I'm a little bit tight right now. So those are all options, but all the same thing. The shape of the right leg is what's important in pulling that in. Deep breath in. Exhale, release. Plant your feet down on the mat, and we'll take the other side. Left ankle crosses over the right thigh. Maybe keep the foot grounded, maybe pull the right thigh in. Press it down through your lower back. Keep opening through the left knee and a little flex of the left toes back towards the knee. One more deep breath in here. And exhale, release. Maybe wag your knees right and left. All right. Then we'll need a lacrosse ball and possibly a bolster for the next couple of ones. So we're gonna do Piriformis and Glute Medius. So Piriformis, right in the middle of the butt cheek, just a little bit above the sit bone. So you don't want it to be directly on your sit bone, and once you get into it, I think you'll be able to tell. So just a little higher than the vertical middle of your butt cheek, but in the middle, east and west. All right, so coming onto your back, plant your feet, lift your hips up, get the lacrosse ball where you want it. And you can stay just like this with your feet planted. Your right knee is going to stay bent here. You can extend the left leg if that feels good, and the right leg can also flop out to the side. Another option. If you have both feet planted, you can rock your hips right and left, get a little exploration, see what feels good, where you get a good amount of therapeutic sensation. And really let your hips get heavy. Let the front of your pelvis relax. We can spend a lot of time working to avoid risk. Because our brain is set up to do that really well, to try and keep us safe. Our primitive brain was developed to make sure that we don't die. The threats are just so much different than they were when our brain evolved, right? We're not, at least most of us aren't at threat of being eaten by a wild animal if we go to the wrong spot, or drinking out of the wrong lake or body of water is probably not going to make us sick. We're not worrying about that. We're not worrying about moving to an environment that doesn't have enough food, etc. What we are worrying about is our social well-being, our financial well-being, right? Those things are more prominent now. And I think relationships is a place where a lot of people worry about taking risks. They want to manage potential heartbreak and sadness and disappointment by trying to make their partner tick all of these boxes and, really making dating and relating and connecting into a science, which I don't think is. And there are always going to be factors that we can't predict. You can plant both feet on the ground and switch to the other side, again, right in the middle of the butt cheek, just a little bit above that vertically. And then feet can be planted on the ground. You can extend the right leg, maybe open the left knee. That's the variation that I'm going to choose. But even if you know that your heart is going to get broken, that you're going to get sad, that you're going to get disappointed, taking the risk to connect, right? Giving yourself the opportunity to have a moment with someone, to have a period of growth, a moment in your life that is full of connection, that is beautiful and ordinary and, maybe just of that one time, I would say it's worth it, right? And I know that heartbreak can be excruciating, almost unbearable. I know very well. But trying to mitigate all risk by not connecting with people, by guarding yourself so much that you never get below surface level with anyone, seems much less fulfilling. All right, whenever you feel something soften or let go, you can come off of that lacrosse ball. Maybe get a little movement in your hips, see how it feels. And then we're gonna go right into glute medius. So same thing, we're gonna be laying on our back, plant your feet on the ground, find your hip bone, so that bony prominence on the front of your body again. And then roll the lacrosse ball straight back from that, roll, roll, roll. And then tuck it right underneath your hip. So the lacrosse ball, it's in my upper glutes, and it's not on the side of my body. It's tucked right to the back of my body. And then feet are planted. You can let one knee open up. You can stack both knees over to the side. Either of those shapes are great. And if you don't want your knee to come all the way to the ground, you can put a bolster or something there so that your knee doesn't come all the way to the ground. And these upper glutes, their primary job, the glute medius, their primary job is to step your foot over to the side. So imagine if you're sitting in your car and you take your first foot out of the car, that is the action. But they also stabilize in that same way. So if you're doing a squat, right, and you're not letting your knees fold in towards each other, you're going to be actively pressing your knees out just a little bit. You're going to be keeping that stable. And glute medius is going to be doing that. So any activity that you're doing, it's going to keep the legs tracking correctly. And glute medius tends to get weak from a lot of sitting. And then it can't turn on when we need it to stabilize our legs, when we need our knees to not bow in, when we need our legs to track correctly, the glute medius doesn't fire, and then our quads will overcompensate. And I think that is what creates a lot of strain in our glute medius. But strengthening it as well as stretching and trigger pointing it is important. All right, whenever you're ready, you can come off of that lacrosse ball and then come over to the other side, bringing the lacrosse ball again, finding your hip bone on the front of your body, rolling that lacrosse ball straight back until you can tuck it just underneath your hip, and then letting that knee open up, or maybe both knees stack. And as a sort of, not counterpoint, but soothing some of the anxiety of the risk of moving into the unknown, starting something new, getting into a relationship, starting a new job, etc. It's also important to look at the truth of where you are right now. So take time to appreciate this moment that you're in. To look at how ordinary whatever it is you're doing has become. Because at some point you had to take a risk to get to where you are now, right? You had to get to this point, and at one point it was all new. But if you've been doing the same thing for a while, there is a wonderful ordinariness that can come into your life, to where the things that you do don't seem extraordinary to you, while someone else looking in on what you do might think it's completely extraordinary. So looking at the truth of where you are, taking time to appreciate that. All right, and when you're ready, you can come off of that lacrosse ball. Again, maybe wag the knees right and left. And then there's one more glute medius trigger point that we'll get into. For that second glute medius trigger point, it could be nice to have two lacrosse balls so that you can sort of rock your hips back and forth and get both of them at the same time. You can also do it with one, and I'll demo both ways. But we're going to do the second glute medius in legs up the wall. And where we had the first one sort of on the side of our butt, we're going to roll the lacrosse ball fully onto the back line of the body, right below the hip crest. So if you follow the hip crest all the way to the back of the body, and then have it not on the top of that hip crest, but just below it, that is where you're going to want those lacrosse balls. So you're going to come into legs up the wall, and if you want to have a pillow or roll a blanket, in my case, for underneath your head to make you more comfortable, you are welcome to have it. When I get into legs up the wall, I usually scoot my butt in close to the wall first, then lay down and swing my legs up so I don't have to do that sort of awkward scoot to get my butt closer to the wall. I'm sure you can figure out how to get your legs up the wall all on your own. All right, so legs up the wall, pick your hips up, place the lacrosse balls in the upper glutes, right below the hip crest. And this might be enough for you. You can rock your hips right and left a little bit, massaging those upper glutes. And if your upper glutes are really tight, you'll be feeling this in your lower back. This glute medius trigger point in particular tends to send referral tension up into the lower back. And the glute medius is wider than just that point. Obviously, we were in the side of our glute and in it before. So if you want to walk those lacrosse balls out a little bit, let it be more of an exploration, see what feels right for you, go ahead and do it. Trigger pointing all throughout the glutes is great for most people. And then you're just going to hang out here. Let the thigh bones plug back into the sockets. Let your arms relax, let your face relax. Let go of any unnecessary tension with which you're supported here. You don't have to hold any part of your body up. So scan your body to see if you are holding any part of it up. Notice if you're curling your toes or if your feet are fully relaxed. Make sure your shoulders are relaxed and your head is supported. You're not having any tension in your neck, in your jaw, in your tongue. You can come back to long, slow breath. And really tune in to see if the muscle is softening. Like I just had a little more relaxation in my right leg. My heel slipped down the wall a little bit. I felt my thigh bone plug back into the socket a little bit more. It can take a while for our nervous system to let its guard down so that our muscles can let go. This is just as much of a mental practice as it is a physical practice. So the relaxation component, being with yourself, checking in, staying here mentally, that is just as important as where the lacrosse ball is. And if you're enjoying this variation, stay here. There's no need to move. If you want to do just one side at a time, or you just have one lacrosse ball, I'll demo my right side first. So I'm going to take the left one out. I'm just going to cross my feet over in the direction of that right lacrosse ball. So my hips are sort of tipped over a little bit, so I can be just on that one side. And then another option, if you only have one lacrosse ball, want to do just one side at a time, you can always put a pillow or a folded up blanket underneath the other butt cheek so that your hips can stay even and have the lacrosse ball just on one side. So that's an option as well. Make sure that you're still breathing. Continue to check in to see if you're having any resistance to staying. Resistance to staying with sensation, resistance to staying with stillness. And as you continue to practice, the more often that you decide to sit with stillness, stay in quiet, stay with a trigger point exercise for an extended period of time, anything like that, the more that you do it, the more you'll notice the tricks that your brain tries to play to get you out of it, right? It's hard enough to start the activity in the first place, right? Resistance. But once you're there, your brain wants to get away from discomfort of any kind, emotional, physical, whatever. So as you work with yourself, you can notice the things that your brain does to try and make you stop doing what you're doing, right? What is it that gets you? What is it that your brain throws your way to try and make you stop? And it can be, oh, did I forget to turn the oven off? Did I forget to lock the front door? Did I send someone else to pick my kids up from school? Those sorts of sudden worries, right? Just throwing little worry bombs at you. It can be worrying about wasting time, right? Like, do I deserve to spend this kind of time on myself? Isn't there something more important I should be doing? Those sorts of thoughts can be really strong and distracting. Whenever you are ready, if you've been just on one side, you can get to the other side. If you're still doing both sides at the same time, just stay, hang out, relax. And once you become aware of sort of the script that your brain uses to get you out of spending time with yourself, it can become kind of comical. Just noticing what your reactions are, letting yourself experience that reaction, but also sending yourself compassion around it, right? Because you know that you can ignore it. You know that you don't have to act on those thoughts, right? Your thoughts aren't you. You don't have to act on them. They're just thoughts. And it can actually be quite funny. I was driving to teach a yoga class the other day, and there was construction pretty much right out of my neighborhood, and that set me back a little bit, but I still had plenty of time to get there, and got on the highway, started going, got off on an exit onto the other highway, and hit completely dead stop traffic. I don't know if there was an accident, I don't know what had happened, but all 5 lanes totally stopped. There were helicopters flying overhead. And I had this moment of tightening where, my nervous system really wanted to freak out and get mad. And, you get that tightening feeling, or I get that tightening feeling where it's like a little bit of panic around getting there on time. And then it was just funny because there's clearly nothing I could do about it. I guess I could have left earlier, but there still would have been that horrific traffic there. And it wasn't like I was going to get out of my truck and run to work. Not that that would have gotten me there any faster anyway. But the point is, I saw myself having the reaction and was able to, feel the beginning of that panic or anxiety or whatever was forming there, and then laugh at it because, I recognize that reaction myself. It is a reaction I've had hundreds of times, thousands of times. But now I'm just aware of it. I'm aware of the feeling, and it can be funny. And then I got to class 2 minutes late, and it was fine. All right, you can come off of that lacrosse ball, let your hips sink back down onto the mat, and just observe. Notice what it feels like. Then you can draw your knees into your chest, give yourself a squeeze, and roll off of the wall. Finally, we're going to get to the QL, the Quadratus Lumborum. So that is the muscle that supports in the lower back. So if you feel into that empty space between your hip crest and your lowest set of ribs, right, you sort of have that empty, soft spot. And then you press in towards the spine on the back of your body. That's going to be your QL. And it's better to press at an angle into the QL rather than press straight towards the spine, because your back will tend to arch. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to press into the QL at an angle. Think of at a diagonal, so not perfectly into the side, right? But at a diagonal, pressing into it. And we're again going to do it in legs up the wall. So you can do it with 2 lacrosse balls and sort of rock yourself back and forth on it. I am not going to demo that way. I'm going to demo with just 1 lacrosse ball, but it'll be pretty obvious how you do it with 2 lacrosse balls. So again, get into legs up the wall. And then lift your butt up, and you're going to put that lacrosse ball again in between the top of the hip crest and the lowest set of ribs. So it's not on either of those things. It's in that empty space. You're pressing it in towards the spine. I'm doing my right side first, so I'm moving my right leg over to the right and then crossing my left leg on top. And my hip isn't on the ground. If that is uncomfortable for you to rest that much weight on the lacrosse ball, you can put a blanket or a pillow underneath your butt. So this is option 1. The second option is bring the left foot over to the right at an angle, and then fully drop the right leg to the ground. This is the version that I like better. It just works better for me. So that lacrosse ball is pressing in towards the spine into the QL, and you can have it closer down towards your hip crest. You can have it closer up towards the ribs. Anywhere in that space is good. When I get it lower towards my hip crest, I get more sensation, and I really feel it radiating into my quad and into really into my hip flexor is where I feel a lot of radiating sensation. Well, I'm actually feeling it all the way down, right there, right in the middle of my quad. So that referral pattern tells me that any lower back tension that I feel is probably because of my quads. My quad tension causes lower back tension. My lower back doesn't usually bother me. If I have been neglecting stretching my quads, or just doing a lot of quad heavy, well, not really quad heavy exercises, but more sitting. If I've been sitting a lot, road trips, things like that, then my lower back will bother me and I have to really work with my quads to help it. But yeah, really working with my quads is what will fix it. So breathe into it. Allow your weight to settle onto the mat. Check in, make sure that your shoulders are relaxed, head is relaxed, everything is soft. Make sure that you are still breathing, that you're not holding your breath around sensation. And if you ever find that you're experiencing so much sensation that you are gritting your teeth and holding your breath, that is too much. You don't need to be doing that much. Get a tennis ball instead of a lacrosse ball, right? The lacrosse ball is pretty hard. A tennis ball is just fine, and you'll get good results with that as well. You can also use a squishier mat underneath you or do this on carpet. There's a lot of ways that you can sort of diffuse the pressure. All right. You can come off of that lacrosse ball, bring both legs back up, and then we'll take the other side. Pick your hips up. Press it in again at an angle into the left side this time. So I guess like that. At an angle, walk your feet over to the left. That might be a good option for you. Ooh, my left is a little bit tender. And other option is dropping that left leg all the way to the ground. Ooh, that is a lot. All right. And then you just hang out there. You can use open mouth exhales. Use your box breath. Scanning your face, your neck, your shoulders, your chest, your arms, making sure everything is soft. Putting as much slack as possible into the system of your muscles. And if you feel a change right away, you can stop, right? There isn't a designated amount of time to do each exercise. You do it until something changes, until the sensation dissipates for you. So like my left side just let go. It went from a lot of sensation when I first got on the lacrosse ball to doesn't feel like much of anything now. So you stay until something changes for you. Going from a lot of sensation to a little bit of sensation or no sensation at all. Feeling the muscles soften, having an emotional change. These are all things to look for. All right, I'm going to come off of my lacrosse ball. Pull your knees into your chest. You can give a little rock and roll right and left. And then roll onto your side to come off the wall. And we'll finish this routine with a supine twist. Bringing out the spine, Getting that other direction of movement in the spine can help to relax the lower back and stretch those muscles. So I suggest having a bolster or something to put underneath your knee. And you'll start on your back. You can bring your bolster over to your left side. Right leg extends, or left leg extends, excuse me. Right knee pulls in. Give it a little squeeze, deep breath in. Exhale, move your leg all the way across your body, resting it down on that bolster. And then your upper back stays flat against the ground. So if you need to push your left elbow into the mat, lift the left shoulder, move it over to help broaden your upper back, you are welcome to do that. And then breathe deeply into your belly, into your ribs, really breathing into any restriction that the twist is creating. Allow yourself to really rest here. You can let your teeth part, maybe your lips part as well, relaxing around the corners of your mouth. Allow your cheeks to soften, your eyes to settle back into the sockets. Fully relax your head. Take any strain out of your hands, out of your arms, letting your arms rest back onto the ground. Keep your breath rhythm slow and smooth. Coming to full inhale, full exhale. The next inhale, come back through center. Roll onto your back and fully extend that right leg. And we'll take the other side. You can move your bolster over to your right side. Right leg stays extended, left knee pulls in. Inhale. Exhale, twist. Move your leg across your body. Oh, got a pop there. And you can press the right elbow into the mat, move the right shoulder blade over, right shoulder over. Broaden the upper back. And if you don't have anything for your leg to rest on, that's fine. It can float. Just don't wrench down on your leg. You're not trying to be super aggressive here. You're letting gravity do the work, and you're letting your muscles settle into this twist slowly, not forcing them. Feel all the places where your body makes contact with the mat. Feeling yourself being held, being supported. Deep breath in. Big breath out. Inhale, come back through center and fully extend that leg. And you're welcome to stay here and relax, laying flat for really as long as you want to. Just checking in with your body, allowing your spine to relax. Laying flat on the ground can feel really nice after all of that. But if you're ready to move on to your day, you can come on up. So I hope that was helpful for you. You can do any of those exercises or stretches on their own, right? You don't need to do the entire sequence all at once, although it can be a nice self-care session if you do. And if you have any questions or comments or need any more information about anything that I've offered, feel free to write something in the comments, and hopefully I will respond, but hopefully I'll respond promptly. And yeah, until next time, I hope that you find a good amount of time for yourself, time to relax, time for self-care, and I hope you can let something go.